Hey everybody, it's Rajesh here.
Intane here.
Welcome to our podcast, Baskets of Knowledge, Chats with a Difference. In our podcast, we invite guests from around the country and around the world to talk about how they got to where they're at the moment. It's about a journey, it's about an experience, it's about their life. Kia ora koutou, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Baskets of Knowledge. This week it's just me. Tani is away doing some pretty cool things up in Auckland, as he does. He's a busy young man at the moment, which is really cool. And I guess as we always start with our podcast, we think about a learning that we have had over the last few weeks. And I think the learning that I had was based on a poem that I heard. I heard it a long time ago, but I listened to it again today, and I actually posted it on my LinkedIn today. It's a poem by this guy called NQ or NAQ, how do I pronounce it? But it's about perspective and, about how so often in life that we're just chasing things, we're chasing to be stronger, to be fitter, which are great things, but we're chasing money, we're chasing fame, we're chasing status, we chase all these things here. And in the poem, he talks about, let's think about nature. In nature doesn't chase anything unless it's trying to eat something. So you only chase something if you can eat something, or you're trying to defend your world. And that got me thinking about the fact that how in life we keep chasing, we want to do things better or better and better and better, but we just stop to think about, hey, actually where we are right now is okay. And it's okay to have that feeling of motion. And it got me to think about myself and my world and what I'm doing. And unfortunately, I guess in the world we always trying to chase these things, but sometimes it's okay for us to stop and go, hey, it's all good. It's all good in our construct at that point in time. So that's my learning, my reflection point, I guess, for this week here. If you want to have a listen to the poem, it's on my LinkedIn. I'll post it and maybe I'll get shared later on as well on the podcast. But hey, it's not about me today. As you all know, for regular listeners, welcome back. For any new listeners, thank you for joining us. If you haven't heard this podcast before, myself and Tane, we think everyone has got a story. Actually, everyone does have a story. We'd love to tell everyone's stories. But as you always say, this is a passion project. We make no money from this here. We'd love to talk to everybody, but we can't. But the people that we do get to talk to are pretty amazing. And today I'm very privileged, honored, and excited to introduce our guest. Before I bring her on, I just want to speak about a bit of a backstory to our guest. I met our guest for the first time last year, and when I met this young, amazing human being, I just went, "Wow, what a crazy, awesome human being with the energy that they brought to the room and the ideas they brought to the room." And I said to Tana, "Hey, Tana, this person's got to come. We got to come and share their story on the podcast at some point." And the way life works, it didn't happen at that point in time. And as I was saying to our guest just before, I think it's actually it's brilliant because they've done some pretty cool things in the last year that actually adds more layers to the story. So it is my privilege, my honor to invite and welcome Crissy Sanders to our podcast. Welcome, Crissy.
Kia ora, hello.
Awesome, Crissy. Thank you for jumping on. Crissy, for anyone who doesn't know who you are, do you want to tell us a bit about who you are at this point in time and where are you at this point in time in your life?
Yeah, awesome. And thank you so much for such a lovely welcome there, Prajesh. That was very kind of you, and I really enjoyed hearing about that poem as well. Yes, so I am 21. I finished Otago at the end of last year doing public health, and then I've been working in Kiribati, which is a little Pacific island country, for the last 6 months. I've been living and working over there, which is a whole nother kettle of fish. So I'll talk about that later. And I'm just at home for a little bit in Auckland, just for a few weeks before I go over to the UK to start my master's. But at the moment, I'm just really enjoying being at home and seeing my family and friends and reading a few books and doing a few life admin and sleeping well, and just enjoying, what life is giving me right now.
That's really beautiful, and I think it's important because as we talk about your story, you've had a pretty busy last 18 months, 12 months, I guess, and your next few months are going to be pretty busy as well. And I guess if we spoke to 17-year-old, the 16-year-old Christian, said to her, hey, when you are 21 years old, you are going to be on the cusp of having spent some time on tropical islands somewhere in the Pacific, but then going to go to Europe within a week or 2 weeks of each other. What would you have said to me at that point in time?
Um, I probably would have said that's awesome, but I wouldn't have believed that that would really happen. I don't know, all these opportunities just kind of um come up, and you just have to take them and try and make them work. But I don't know, I couldn't have predicted that they were coming.
Yeah, and I like the like how you said opportunities because I just read your recent article that you wrote for the Best of Health Science newsletter, and one thing that really stood out for me was how you wrote when opportunities come, don't step into them, just jump and take them. Is that a philosophy you had all your life, or is it something that you've developed over the last few years?
Yeah, it was something that I thought about a lot, yeah, over the last couple of years. And it's definitely become a philosophy that I do like to try and think about and bring into my decision making. I was talking at the there's a young woman in leadership event at Otago University last year, and I was speaking to them, and that's when I started talking about that, because I was trying to think about what message I wanted to get across to these year 12 and year 13 girls across the Otago region. And I really do think that you learn so much more if you push yourself, and you have to adapt to that. And it is scary. And sometimes I just want to go home and just like not do all these kind of, yeah, sometimes quite overwhelming things. But it also, you just learn so much from it. And I think the first real jump that I did was between second and third year of university. And I went and booked a flight to Tanzania, and I went and traveled through Tanzania and Kenya for a few months just by myself. But at that time, I was like, oh, maybe I'll just get a summer job. And then, but this like idea of going and doing something a little bit radical and traveling and spending all my student loan money, whoops, um, on doing something a bit different was at the back of my head. And I'm so glad that I just decided to change track and just take that rather than doing the normal, get a summer job and stay in New Zealand and try to make up some money for the next year ahead. Just try to change my frame of mind, and then in the next year, I mean, I still had to make some money. So just working through the uni year part time, and I think it was so worth it just to take those 3 months off and go and travel and see so much more of the world. And it really changed my perspective. So yeah, I do always try to think about that rather than doing, and it is something that I've found there is always like a step option. Like even now I could go and step back into Otago and do my master's there, but I'm trying to push myself to take a jump, and that's why I'm going over to the UK to do it instead.
And there's so much in there to unpack, and I love that, Chrissy, because as you said, when you when you had that platform to speak to young people about, hey, what would you like to take away? And we always hear about the word take an opportunity, but jumping an opportunity is a whole different perspective at all. Use the word frame of mind and mindset. Jumping versus stepping are two very different things. But the beauty of both is you can always go back. You can always go back if you need to, but you're never going to go forward if you don't try that. So that's really,
Mm.
really, really beautiful how you put that there. And I guess, you said your first jump was you between second and third year. But if I go back a little bit, would you, this is just a bit of a question, do you reckon your first jump would have been the fact that you left home to Auckland to come to Dunedin to study? Because you've got three universities in Auckland that you could go to. Would you consider that a jump, or was that just a normal progression for you and your family that you're going to go leave home for university?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it it didn't feel like a jump because it was something that I had wanted to do, and I wanted to go down to Otago, and my parents were very pro um moving out, like in the best way possible, like as in to learn how to be an adult and learn to manage yourself and take the opportunity not to live at home but to grow as a person. But I think I didn't feel like it was going to be a jump, but then when you come down to fly 2 hours to Otago and start university there, then I think it did feel like a jump in reality when it actually happened. And I think, yeah, one of the main things I thought about in first year that really surprised me was learning how to like look after yourself, which sounds really simple or straightforward, but I think it was mainly during those times when you're sick or you have like a cold and you're just in your like hall's room by yourself, and like no, you can't just say like, oh, mum, can you like, bring me some food or like something like that. It's you are on your own and you do have to like make your decisions carefully and choose to stay home and rest up and get better, even though you're a stressed first year health sci. So yeah, I think in reality, when I did go down, then it did feel like quite a jump away from the security of home. But in saying that, I also did realize like it was like blinds were like lifted off my eyes, like my world became so much less sheltered. I think before that was just the routine of going to school and like extracurricular things and coming home and things. And like as soon as I went to Otago, it was like, oh my gosh, there's so much out here. So yeah, it was a cool jump too.
And it's crazy because this is normal. I think everybody lives in their world, as you said. Where they have a routine. When they're at school, there's a routine where there's going to school, extracurricular, going to work, with your family, your partner, or around you. This is the world that you know. And then when you go to university, like you said before, it's a whole different ball game. Whether you move 2 hours away or whether it's 20 minutes down the road, that whole dynamic changes quite dramatically.
Mm.
And no, nothing can prepare for it. You can read all the books, you can have all the advice, but until you're actually there in your room by yourself, like or sitting in a lecture going, damn, what's going on here? It's so different.
Yeah, that's so true. The reality of that sets in, doesn't it? Especially, I don't know, you just feel like you're like, oh, this is just quite a lot adjusting to all of this. I think for a lot of people, when you start university, it takes you like a hot second to work out how to study and how to do things. And then by then it's already like, all the lectures and everything is already kind of run off with you and you're kind of trying to chase it from behind.
Yeah, that's so funny, and there's no time, right? There's time seems to just disappear in that whole context there, and it's
Yeah.
really quite funny because as I said to you at the start, when you think about going to tertiary, wherever tertiary is, everyone goes, oh, 3, 4, 5 years, that sounds like a long time, but in the context of time, it just flies by so quick, which
Mm.
is so crazy. You can't even fathom that there. And talking about time flying by, as you said, just before that, your big jump was between second and third year. What was as you're thinking about maybe going away, summer job, going away, summer job, what was the moment when you're like, actually, I'm just going to take the jump and go?
Yeah. I think because we had COVID, and the borders had just opened, I was just like, you know what? Who knows if they're going to close again? Who knows if I'm not going to be able to travel when I finish uni or when it's convenient to. So I think you just have to take the chance that you have. And that's when I was like, right, well, I've got 3 months sitting in front of me. I could work every day and fill them all up, or I can take this chance to do this because, you never know what's around the corner. And I do try to remind myself of that often, especially, yeah, when you think about there's just so many things that could happen to you between the space of, say, that summer and when you might be finished uni and like ready to travel and all sorted and stuff. And I think it's just worth just taking the chance and going because, um, yeah, and also because sometimes being so planned for and like very organized plan to go and like everything's all the dots are crossed and everything's lined up, then it's actually maybe takes a little bit of the fun out of it, and it's kind of almost more fun just to make an abrupt decision and go for it. And yeah, and then I was like, right, well, all those things considered, I'm going to put a deposit on this flight ticket, which is so expensive, and flying to Kilimanjaro Airport in November.
Crazy, awesome. And as you leave the safety and the joys and the normality of New Zealand and you land in East Africa, which is a whole different world altogether. What is the first thing that really stood out for you as you hit the African continent?
The first thing was realizing that I just had to trust people and not like if I couldn't trust anyone, then I wasn't going to get very far, literally, like
Yeah,
not even from the airport to like where I was going to go because there's someone who had to come to pick me up to take me to where I was staying in Arusha. And they all of him that man and the other people who were also collecting passengers were just all standing outside, like having a laugh in the like really hot sun. And I just walked out of the airport and I was like, wow, I just have to like trust that this person who says he's gonna pick me up and knows my name is the right person, and like that's all good. But it was, for a split second, it was like, oh my gosh, like this is kind of what everyone's told me not to do, not to just like jump in a car with someone that you're not completely sure. I don't know. I was like,
Yeah.
maybe he just found out that my name was one of the passengers on the plane, and I don't know, just decided to come find me. But yeah, you just learn to trust people. And on that drive home, he was lovely. He was really nice. It was fine. It was all good. Got there okay and everything. But he took me past the Vodafone shop to get a SIM card, and exactly the same thoughts in my head, because they were like, "Oh, we need you to hand over your passport to
Yeah.
get the SIM card," and then they were like, no, we'll hold on to it for a few hours and then you can come back and get it. And I was like, oh, like, surely you don't need to do that. And I was like, no, actually, I'll have my passport back. And I went to walk over to get it back. And the lady just looked at me, the shopkeeper at Vodafone looked at me and said, oh, don't you trust us? And I was like, because that just makes you feel so
Yeah.
uncomfortable. Like, I don't want to be that Pākehā tourist who's like really fussy and doesn't trust the way that the natural systems and the way that things are done. So I just like gulped and I was like, okay. And I left my passport with her for like that whole afternoon and came back and got it the next day. And it was fine. There was no problem. But yeah, that was definitely the first realization, was like, if I can't put my trust in these people, I literally won't be able to go anywhere in this whole trip. Probably just going to stay at the airport.
That's so insightful there, Chrissy, because most people say, oh, the air or the sand or whatever, but actually for you, it's actually the reality that, when you leave the normality of New Zealand, where everybody seems to be, trusting you to a certain extent, but you go to a new country, you've got to trust people and blind faith. You've got to get blind faith and go, okay, this is
Mm.
what happens. And it's really hard, it's really hard. And your two stories right there are, you take that for granted in New Zealand when you go to the airport and there's a sign for you, okay, cool, whatever this person is, who I am. I go buy a SIM card, they'll ask me for my driver's license, cool, won't think twice about it. But the minute you're in a different environment, oh, wait a minute, it's just so crazy, isn't it? It's so, so crazy.
Yeah, it does make you rethink things. And then if you, at the end of the day, if you think about it, you're like, what's the difference? Like, why am I worried
Yeah.
about it here when I'm not in New Zealand? Is that like what are my what are my biases here, or like why
Yeah.
do I feel that uneasy about it? And it is really hard to dissect. It's like kind of those types of questions that you don't want to answer and you want to kind
Yeah.
of like run away and not really think about why it's
Yeah.
like that. But yeah.
Because the answer will not surprise you, will actually make you question yourself as well. Wait a minute, am I that kind of person? And it's crazy because there's gonna be those biases that, as you said before, you run away from and go, no, I'm not that kind of person, but your actions speak a whole different thing. And you're like, oh, wait a minute, maybe I am that kind of person. Whatever
Yeah,
that kind
absolutely.
of
Like
person is.
thinking about it and acknowledging it and being not being scared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talking about your awesome spontaneous adventures. So again, I'm just gonna go what I've learned about you through reading other things. One of the interesting things that you did when you were over in East Africa was you worked or helped out at a women's refuge. I mean, that was not something that you planned. That was just something you happened to chance upon. And what is that like for you as you happen to chance upon this place here?
Yeah. I was in Zanzibar on just yeah, traveling around, having a good time, exploring, mainly walking up and down beaches and getting very sunburnt. Whoops, that's definitely the most sunburnt I've ever been in my life. Um, that is one thing that's hard about traveling by yourself, is putting sunscreen on your back. Um, but I was thinking about what I wanted to do over the next few months, and I had my return flight back, so I knew how many. I think I probably had like about 6 weeks left. And there's this really awesome platform called Workaway, and it shows grassroots organizations. Basically, the ethos is just, if you kind of like need a hand, you want someone to step in and help you with something. And you can join that platform, and it's got an app and a website, and I think it's a small fee, I think maybe $50. And so on recommendation by one of my cousins, I joined that, and then I could see that there was this women's shelter in the middle of Kenya, like in Naivasha. It's reasonably rural, but it's about 2 hours out of Kenya. So Naivasha is a small town, but it was out of that, in a big farming area. And it's the only women's shelter in the country.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and my background is in public health. That's what I study and what I'm really interested in. And violence is not something that is pretty, or yeah, it is yeah, never something that is easy to talk about. It's horrific, and it is something that is absolutely irreversible, has irreversible effects on people's lives. But I was reading about this, well, it can have irreversible effects on people's lives. I was reading about this shelter, and I was like, oh, that would be, they need people to come and help, and run sessions to help the woman, they equip them with skills in which they can look after themselves and their children, and make money as soon as they get out of the shelter, so that they aren't reliant on going back into abusive relationships that they've had in the past, or forming new ones. So the idea is trying to equip them with all that they need to be solid by themselves. And I was thinking about all that I've learned at university, and all that I've learned through studying health, even basic hygiene, and ways that you can make sure that that your kids can grow up without getting too many like bugs and colds, and keep them a little bit safe from those kinds of things, which is pretty simple, like those basic hygiene ideas. But I was, yeah, they were like, we need someone to come and teach people about this, and help us with our like food prep areas for better hygiene, and just know how to manage with, it's an environment, it's a women's refuge shelter with lots of people, lots of women, a lot of kids running around, and they were just trying to make it a little bit more safer and healthier for everyone that was there, especially on like a farm-based area. And so I went and I helped to teach them some of those basic things, and like go through some class, like some just basic, like classes and workshops and activities and things with them, and talk about health and like different areas of the body, and some of that knowledge that can really help your health literacy, and help you to be better able to then understand if maybe something's wrong, or if you're fine and you'll just naturally recover from it. And I mean, even as I'm talking about this now, I keep saying like basic things, but in reality, like it's only basic to us who have
Yep.
grown up with this as something that we know. We know to wash our hands before we eat, and why we do that. But it's not, that's not universal everywhere, and it is something that is really valuable to learn. And not basic at all to a lot of people. So I went and helped there, and I also spent the rest of the time that I had trying to help. There's a few kids there that should have been in school, but they weren't because they were in the shelter, and the shelter couldn't take them to a school because there wasn't one nearby, because it was a big farming area. And so I tried to help some of the older kids. There was a 7-year-old and a few 5-year-olds to learn some basic like numbers and colors, both in Swahili and in English, which was like chaos everywhere. Like I couldn't get them to sit down for like 2 minutes, but we did also have a lot of fun and try to make it a bit more active, and help them to maybe be a little bit better phased when they do find themselves restarting or beginning school, when they do move out of the centre.
That's really really cool. But what I like about that, there's two things. The fact that, we go back to acknowledge the fact that what we think is basic and normal is actually not basic and normal. our norm and what is basic to us is just for our life situation. And if
Yeah.
we go into a different context, and you've had some critical context that you've had to see different norms, but that is the norm that they live in, and it's nobody's fault. It's just the way society is in those places there, which is not right or wrong. It's just the way it is. And I think that's the hardest thing. When I travel, I have to turn off that bias of mine that goes, that's so wrong and that's so right, because it's not, who am I to judge that's wrong or right, when in that context, in that world, it's the world that they know and nothing else, which is crazy. But again, if you think about that in New Zealand as well, there's so many communities where right and wrong is very different based on different scenarios. So that's really cool that you brought that up. But also the other thing I wanted to acknowledge is the fact that you actually learning in your classroom learning was being done in real life. Sometimes we do classroom learning and you're like, okay, cool, this makes no sense, but you actually are seeing it playing out in front of you and trying to navigate that, which probably makes you a better student when you do come back.
Yeah, and I think it was last year I was taking a health anthropology paper, and we learned about the word ethnocentrism, which means when you compare other cultures from the standpoint of your own. And that was like a light bulb moment for me, because I was like, why? Like, this is all, everything. Um, I'm comparing it from my biased standing point of my own culture, but that doesn't mean that that's right or like the best way to do it at all. Like, it's probably not. And there's so many other ways to do it. And so um, when we say, like, I know, basic health and hygiene, that's only from looking at it through our own biased lenses from our own standing point. And I really do try and think about that term now and look at it more from like a bird's eye view rather than out of my little culture into the other ones, to try and yeah, decrease the amount of effect that has on shaping your opinions.
And it's hard because it's never going to be zero. It's never ever going to be zero. But it's just the
Yeah.
awareness that, hey, there is a difference. I need to be aware of the difference.
Yeah, it is so hard to do still. Like, it's going to be a forever a battle.
Yeah.
But that's good too. The more that we try to shape and change our lenses, that's part of it. It's just trying and trying to move that and think about the way that we do things, and think about the way that we think about things. And it's that pushing for it that's important, that you care about it.
Yeah, and I guess that's a great analogy for your jumping as well, because you got to jump out of your own comfort zone to think about things from a different perspective. It's not just about a physical movement. It's actually when to jump in the way you think about a certain situation. Um, which is, yeah, I'm going to keep coming back to that because I think that's such a great way to look at life in so many different ways. So you have this amazing experience. I'm sure there's so many other layered experiences there, which is fantastic, which we could go into, but we don't have a lot of time. You come back to Dunedin, you keep doing your study. Where and how does the world of Child Fund Kiribati come into your life?
Yeah, so kind of random, but I had a lecturer in nutrition, and I don't even take nutrition. I studied public health, but then started doing some nutrition papers because I had some spare spots, and I thought that would be really complimentary and interesting, because nutrition is very interlaced with health. Um, and one of my lecturers wanted to make an opportunity for a master's student potentially to have have the chance to work with the Child Flying Kiribati team, because she herself had been a consultant to the team for about 6 or 7 years. So she was like, look, like, I do this work as like a kind of like a side gig to also being a professor at Dunedin, but also there'd be huge benefits to having a student go over there, both for the team in Kiribati and also for the student themselves, and maybe it could become a master's project. So I think it went something along the lines of that. But then it all started, didn't quite come together, but she knew that I had traveled through Kenya and Tanzania and was pretty interested in global health and wasn't too phased about more low resource settings without some of the comforts that we might like in New Zealand. And so, yeah, brought it up with me, and I was like, yeah, like, I'm not not doing my master's yet or anything like that, but if there's an opportunity to go and work over there, I'd be very interested to take it and learn from that experience. And also, yeah, like what a cool thing to do straight after finishing uni. And I don't have to get a big girl job and like organize my life and try and apply for things in New Zealand. So learning, getting to travel, learn from the experience, learn more about the field and see if that's something I might be interested in doing in the future, continuing to work in low resource settings on health and development projects. And so I was like, yes, big yes. And it was a VSA assignment. So it's through the New Zealand aid program through MFAT, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, and which means that they covered my flights, accommodation, and like I got daily allowance, so it was all amazing. And yeah, I had an incredible time. I left in February, and I just came back a couple of weeks ago, so I was there for 6 months straight.
Awesome. And I love that because, again, it was the opportunity through your previous experience that got the lecturers having a conversation with you. Because if you hadn't have done that there, the conversation would have happened, and then who knows? Well, who knows what would happen? We actually have no idea in that crazy multiverse. Um, so again, same question that I asked when you landed in Africa. What is it that you noticed when you landed in Kiribati? Because now it's very, very different. Africa, different. Pacific Island, you'd think that Pacific Island very similar to New Zealand, but actually we know it's not. What is one of the first things that when you landed there, you're like, ah, this is what I need to do.
Mm. Yeah, it's really interesting because I think when I landed, I actually didn't feel like a big feeling of surprise or like, you know, I had kind of thought it would be like when I landed in Tanzania, which was like my eyes were like wide open. They probably could have been stretched more. And I was like looking at everything and like taking everything in. And it was just like an assault to all of my senses. And it was
Yep.
amazing. When I landed in Kiribati, I was actually like pretty calm. I was like, oh, yeah, yeah, this looks familiar. Kind of, yeah, reminded me of some of the experiences that I'd had in East Africa. But the thing that was really different and has been different the whole time that I'm there is that it's very safe and very, yeah, very secure for, as in like people don't try and get more money off you or like don't try to follow you or um, if someone asks to give you a ride, they genuinely just want to give you a ride, like for your own benefit. And that kind of blew my mind because I was quite used to like looking behind my back and making sure I was very aware of my surroundings when I was in East Africa. And I think when you do travel as a young Pākehā female, it is quite a necessary thing to be just quite aware of what's going on around you. But yeah, I was amazed, like in Kiribati, everything that you could have thought, oh, maybe that isn't quite right, was. Like I would still remember this time going on a ferry and I didn't know how much it was. It was just a little ferry across a channel between two islands. I don't know how much it would cost, but we just put out the all of the coins that we had on our palm and they just picked up like 1 50 cents. There must have been like $15 there. And it's like, and I would have thought that they'd just take whoever was running the ferry would have told us it was more or taken more of the coins because it was all just lying there. Like, I wouldn't have known how much it cost. But that was the amazing thing about people in Kiribati. They just were so honest and so reliably safe and I had some wonderful car rides when I was like waiting at the bus stop and then a car would just pull up and they'd be like, oh, hey, sister, like, do you want a lift? And I'd be like, oh, yeah. And I had some great chats. So a random person would just drop me off to where I was hoping to go. It was so, yeah, that was wonderful. And I really enjoyed that. And I think it makes you, yeah, really appreciate that familiarity between people that yeah, I think even compared to New Zealand, you wouldn't just pick someone up who's waiting at a bus stop. You'd be like, well, they can work it out themselves, or they can do what they want, and we just continue driving on by ourselves in our empty car. That kind of generosity and not seeing the barriers between people, the need to make a barrier between people was amazing.
And that's so beautiful. And I guess it reminds us, or it reminds me as I listen to this, that we forget about the beauty of the human spirit. I think my personal opinion is that everyone is born with goodness in their heart. But what happens is society, or the way we develop in society, then changes that for whatever reason. You know, um, and sometimes, what is, again, back to what is normal in Kiribati, you're like, whoa. They're like, well, if for you, it's like, what, this is pretty crazy. But for someone from Kiribati, that's the normal of doing things. And it just reminds me when I moved from Africa to New Zealand, my cultural construct was so blown away by the way how different things were. Um, and that just makes me appreciate that humans are humans wherever you go. But and inherently we're not inherently most humans are nice, but sometimes life has happened to somebody to make them do things that they don't wouldn't normally do because of, either a financial situation, a um, economic situation, a health condition, just that's what forces people to do not so good things. So it's really beautiful that you had that experience there. And I guess if we talk about your day-to-day life in Kiribati, what is that like for you? You went over there because you had this awesome opportunity, and how did Chrissy grow, I guess, in that time there with what she did?
Yeah, yeah, and I just a note on what you just said, but I definitely, yeah, I respect, in East Africa there was some incredible people as well. Most people that I met were amazing, but I think it was just kind of like this air of having to be a little bit cautious because
Yeah.
there were a few things that happened, or a few like little strange encounters with people. I got proposed to a lot. That was funny, but but um, yeah, and that's okay. Like you say, it's because of there are reasons for that, and economic or financial, social situations, and that's fine. That's how it is there. Um, and there are always, yeah, people of all spectrums. And I mean, it's also not to say that everyone in Kiribati is amazing, because
Yeah.
there's always people everywhere you go that are amazing, and
Yeah.
also people that are on the other side of the spectrum. But yeah, it does make you learn a lot about human beings and also yourself. But yeah, coming back to what you asked about daily life. So I was working on an infant nutrition program. It was a pilot program designed by that professor that I had at Otago and her colleague, another professor from Otago, who worked as consultants to the Child Fund team. So it was like this whole new pilot program, pretty exciting. Wanted to see how it went, for the potential of scaling it up and doing more of that in the future. And so we trained some community leaders, a dozen community leaders on nutrition and health. And it was kind of like a bit of a plunket program, as in those leaders went to visit the households that had little ones, and talk to them about nutrition and health and looking after their families in the best way. But it was really cool because those community leaders were people that the mothers and families tended to know, maybe someone that they knew from church or from their village, who would go and have a yarn to them at home, and just, I don't know, sit on the couch and have a chat one afternoon every month. And it was really cool to be part of that. So what I did was a lot of project management. So I would talk to the community leaders when they came into the office, and hear about how things were going. Where some of the mothers would sometimes drop in to the office. There was one time, like when a lady came in and she was like, I just don't know what infant formulas to feed my baby. I can't breastfeed them, and I need to choose one from the shop. And she didn't speak English, but my colleague translated. And so the three of us jumped on a motorbike, and we just went on the bike down to the local shop, and we were just standing there in the aisle and looking at everything. And between us, we helped to identify which one might be appropriate for her baby's age, and what she was looking for. And so that was really cool. And then like was back to the office on the bike, and back to work. But things like that would always happen. And yeah, lots of meetings with the community leaders, and we did cooking demonstration with the families. There was 3 cooking demonstrations where we just showed how you can, even if you have lots of different foods because we're trying to encourage people to use all three different food groups, as in protein, fruit and veg, and carbs when feeding their infants. So like it's okay to mash them all together, and we're showing them how you can use a fork to do that. It doesn't matter if you have a fish, you could like cook the fish and you could put it in as well. You can make a little soup or something like that. And so that was really cool. And then at the end of it, we visited all the households, me and the team. So I was the only Kiwi in my team. It was all local Kiribati people, but they were wonderful and we had so much fun together. And so, yeah, in that last month, we went through and visited all the households and talked to all of the families that we've been working with, and that was amazing. A lot of them would be like really excited to have us visit and have visitors at their house, and would bring us in and introduce us to their kids, and often be like given infants to hold and things like that. So it's really cool. But the whole aim of doing that work and doing the home visits and making sure that people had someone to talk to and could get advice on how to look after and feed and take care of their babies, it came from the lack of knowledge in the community about when you should introduce food to an infant, which for anyone interested is 6 months of age. So should exclusively breastfeed an infant until 6 months of age, but then that's not enough to sustain them for all of the really rapid growth and development they go through. So you need to introduce food at 6 months. But in Kiribati, there was a lot of infants that didn't get introduced food until maybe they're like 1 year of age. And that kind of malnutrition is irreversible. And does lead to stunting. And 1 in 3 children in Kiribati is stunted, which means that they are not an appropriate height that you would expect for their age. And it is really sad because those effects you can't turn around. And that's why we designed this whole program to see how visiting people in their homes could be an effective intervention for the transmission of knowledge for behavior change communication. So actually trying to get that end result of behavior changing, which is a lot harder than it seems, and something that is pretty hard to achieve through, I don't know, less contact hours like flyers or like talking to people. It's really does require a close relationship and regular touch points and feeling like you can talk to someone about it. So yeah, in the end, we could see that there has been a decent impact on mothers' attitudes, knowledge, and behaviour related to infant feeding, and that was fantastic to see. And like some of the feedback was really cool. Like families saying, "Oh, like we've fed our newborn really differently to our older children, but we've been able to see they've gotten sick a lot less often, and they've grown really healthy and they're really smiley and alert. And yeah, we're really grateful for this program." So that was really amazing to see that, because I guess whenever you're doing work like that, you're like, oh, like I really hope that this will bring about worthwhile outcomes, but you never know at the end of the day. So yeah, it was really cool, and I really really fantastic. I really enjoyed the experience and learnt so much, probably a lot more than my colleagues or the families that we work with learnt from me. I learnt from them.
That's so beautiful, and well done to your team. Not just you, but everyone that was involved in the team, but also
Yes, yeah.
the two professors that wants to bring this out there. That's really awesome. And like you said before, the tangible outcomes were there for you to see in those whānau and those families out there as the young people, that they can notice the difference. So yeah, and again, a big mahi to you for taking up that opportunity to do that there, because it's very easy for someone to say someone else can do it. Like you said before, or someone else can pick up that person from the bus stop. It won't be me if it's raining, right? So it's really awesome that you've done that there. And I'm sure there's, again, like your East Africa trip. I mean, I'm sure there's so many layers here. But I guess we'll talk about something that's not related to your work. Let's talk about the stray dogs. How was that for you? Because I
Oh
read there
yeah.
that you enjoy running, but hey, you've got some stray dogs in Kiribati.
Yes, yeah. A lot of packs of stray dogs. So definitely, Kiribati is no touristic, pretty resort-based place, which it is sometimes mistaken for. There's no tourism in Kiribati. There are no tourists. It has no sewage. There's no sewage system. You can't swim in the sea on the main island, one that I was on, because of the sewage. There's no water table, so there's no fresh water because the water table has been salinated, filled with seawater and also with sewage, because the island is only maximum 3 meters high,
Yeah.
usually 1 or 2 meters high in most places, but maximum 3 meters high. And so we're completely reliant on um, rainwater, but then sometimes there's no rain, and so there's literally no water. So it's a very challenging environment. And yeah, add to all of that is that there's packs of stray dogs that do attack people, including a friend of mine who did get attacked and yeah, bitten on the calf by some dogs, which is pretty scary. And it did mean that some safety about walking and biking and running was a little bit restricted, and had to be really aware of that, and carry sticks or rocks, and be fully able to throw them as well, which I wasn't the first time that I was approached by a pack of dogs. I just, you're like, oh yeah, I can do that, and you're like, actually no, like I just freaked out and I didn't know what to do. And you just get really scared, and they're all like barking and like kind of coming around you and coming closer and closer. And it was at that moment that a storekeeper in a like little like household shop nearby came out and just started shouting at them. They all ran off. But you do realize that it's not just being able to carry like a stick or a rock, but actually being able to defend yourself as well. And so yeah, did make me quite struggle quite a lot with being able to do exercise, because I am quite an active person. I love walking or biking places, and running every day if I can. But I think the thing about my time in Kiribati was just trying to make everything work in the best way that I could for myself. Like it would have been easy to be like, this sucks, can't do anything that I want to do. I get sick all the time and I want to go home. But I was really determined to try and find solutions that worked. And one of them was that there's a long causeway that's 3 meters, 3 kilometers in length between two of the islets of the atoll. So, like before the causeway was built, you would have just been able to cross at low tide, but not at high tide. And so they built this 3 kilometer causeway that you can cross on. And so I would go there and I would run along there. And because there weren't any villages, there weren't any food, there weren't any houses, then there wasn't any dogs there either. And so that was something that I was able to do. But it was so hot still, like running. And I'd come back, like I'd finish my run and I would just like be spinning, like my head would be spinning. As soon as I stopped, I'd be like, whoa. Yeah, just from all of the heat. But at least there wasn't any dogs to watch out for. So it was challenging, having all of those stray dogs everywhere and being frightened of them, especially after my friend got attacked. And just sometimes even, yeah, especially at night, you do want to be aware of not going out too much, just because you just can't tell where they are, and it's just so much harder to see them. So even like crossing my driveway at night, I'd be kind of like scanning, and like it was almost like you have like in the movies when they put like night goggle visions on and you're night vision goggles and you're like trying to scan everywhere. It was almost like you felt like you were doing that. But yeah, it was an adjustment. It was definitely an adjustment.
Yeah, and I refer to that because we speak about all the cool things you've done, but also in amongst all that, there's still you're trying to live your life in a country that's so different. And one of those things I just said before when we first started this conversation, you spoke about you just went for a run, all cool, trying to do that. Those normal things that we spoke about before, those basic things. There's another layer that you have to think about before you do those things that you would easily do while you were in New Zealand. So yeah. Crissy, I'm also gonna again, like you saw, there's so many layers, but I want to also touch on the fact that in amongst all this here, you've also rightly, I think rightly and well deservedly got a scholarship to go and study in the United Kingdom in like I said, in a few weeks' time. What I guess my question for you is when did you think about, okay, this is something else that you wanted to do? Because you've got all these cool experiences, and what is the motivation for you to go, actually, wait a minute, there's more that I can study, and let me just chuck in my hat in the ring for a scholarship.
Mm. Yeah, and thank you very much. That's very kind. Um, yeah, it is interesting because it has been a long road. I think it was in early 2023 when I came back from Africa. And then I was sitting in all my lectures and I could just, I don't know, see in my mind a lot of the things that they were talking about, say with like water systems and food availability and food systems. And we are talking about like clinics and things like that. And I could see them in my mind in those settings that I'd just been in just a few weeks ago. Um, and then I was thinking about how much more you can learn when you also look at things from different perspectives, and how going over there had been able to provide that for me. And we're all in our last years in our last year of university, we're all wondering about what we're going to do, and it's like, oh no, the real world, I'm going to have to get a job and sort things out, or do my masters, or what do we do we stay at Otago forever, or and that is really hard. It's a really hard period to work out what to do and to settle on something that you're happy with. And I just started to really consider studying somewhere else to learn from a different perspective from people who had worked in that field all their life, and be able to gain another layer on what I had already learned at Otago. And I did get frustrated sometimes at Otago because we learnt a lot about the New Zealand healthcare system and kind of everything from a New Zealand centric lens. And that, I think, that is the danger of living in a country that is very isolated from and far away from the rest of the world. And so it was very New Zealand centric. And it was great, but there was one paper that was global health, and it was talking about like international health and like really different aspects of it that I hadn't thought about before, even like urban planning and climate change and how that's going to affect health and all these things. And I was like, oh, this is what I'm really interested in. And I still remember to this day like being really surprised when one of my classmates was like, oh, that paper, like, I just don't get it, it's not that great, eh? And I was like, are you kidding? Like, this is like everything, like this is what I've been waiting for. And that's when I was like, actually, maybe I do need to go and learn from a different perspective. And I want more of this, rather than always being in the New Zealand system. I want to think about the world as without borders. I want to think about all the different places in which the aspects of health that we're talking about are in different ways, and actually seen in different ways and experienced in different ways, and it's not that clear cut. And so I started applying for scholarships to do university in anywhere overseas. To be honest, that was where I started off at. But there are a lot of it was a long road. I mean that. Like, I tried to apply for Fulbright to the States, but I couldn't because my degree was 3 years, whereas the States recognizes 4-year degrees. So I didn't have enough points to apply. I tried to apply for the Chevening one to the UK, but I didn't have enough years of work experience to do that. I tried to apply for Gates Cambridge, but never even got an interview. I applied for Rhodes and to Oxford, and I got 2 interviews and went to Government House and got interviewed by the Governor General and the whole committee, and I was in the last 8, but then missed the top 3 that got scholarships, and which was it was hard, and yeah, just kept going and like kind of on a furious search of the internet. Like, I must have spent a ridiculous amount of time doing this over that whole, over more than a year, since maybe like March 2023 until yeah, I was still doing it in Kiribati. I was like, I'd finish my work at work and I'd be using the Wi-Fi because I didn't have Wi-Fi at my house in Kiribati. And I'd be trying to find other things. I was like emailing the Rotary and the Lions and everything. But there was one application that I did in January when I was at my summer job. So this is me. Yeah, I just spent so long trying to find things, and it only came through in the end of May. And kind of by that time, I was like, oh, like if I'm going to make this happen, like the school year starts in September, like the end of May, it was like, I don't know. I don't even, I kind of have to exhaust every possible opportunity in case that doesn't come through because it's so close to the time in which I need it. And I don't know, I'd done it in January, and by the time it was May, I was like, oh, I can't even remember what I wrote, and I don't know what my odds are. And then I got an email for an interview, and they were like, you have to come to Government House in Wellington. I was like, I'm in Kiribati. Like, I can't get back. I can't pay to get back because the flights to Kiribati are very expensive. And I ended up doing it from the New Zealand High Commission to the New Zealand Embassy in Kiribati and zooming in from there to like the whole panel. And yeah, got the scholarship, and I was so happy about it. And just, yeah, overall incredibly relieved that I could actually make it happen to do my master's overseas and learn from a different perspective, grow as a person, have that overseas learning curve where you learn from teaching and having been taught from different people in a different way and doing different assessments and being in a classroom with different people from different backgrounds who have so much that you can learn from them as well, and you can learn from each other. And I am thrilled. I'm thrilled.
Again, well done and well deserved. And the reason why I say well deserved is I just want to put it into context for anyone out there because people think that oh, you get a scholarship easy, so easy, you just must put a application and done. But as you have just said, it wasn't just an overnight process. It is quite a process, and it is so easy for you to get disheartened after you get your first rejection, right? Because these are big. These are not just putting an application. There's an interview process. There's writing lots of things. So again, a big mehi, but also a big reminder to anyone out there that's looking to apply for scholarships or apply for these opportunities that hey, don't give up and just keep grinding and keep doing it because because um the reason that it really stood out for me in this whole conversation was your why was really strong. You were doing it because your vision was over here, which was what was driving you. Sometimes that's what gets you through all these no's and these highs and these lows. And so really, really awesome and well done. And it's really cool to see what will happen for you over the next few years, I guess the next 18 months or so. And I'm having a bit of a chuckle in my mind here because East Africa, sunburnt, Kiribati, super hot. I don't think that's gonna happen to you where you're going next. I think that's
Yeah, absolutely. My mum's already like convinced me to bring two coats, and I'm like, Mum, like I only have one suitcase. Like, I'm going for a year, and she's like, no, you need two coats. It's
yeah,
gonna be chilly. But
yeah.
to be honest, I think Dunedin has prepared me well. I was saying to you earlier, but I just went back down earlier in this week just to see everyone. And it was super nostalgic. I was like, oh, I really miss this place. Maybe I should stay here. It's easy and I know how it is and it's comfortable and stuff. But man, it was cold, eh? I'm glad I didn't go to Kiribati before going to Dunedin because I don't think I would have stayed.
Oh, you'll be done. See you later. Yeah. Oh, crazy. Oh, beautiful, beautiful, Chrissy. It's so exciting for you. And I guess as you said, you're heading away on Monday, which is in the next few days. For by the time this podcast gets released, you'll already be in the UK, living your life there. But it's pretty exciting heading away on Monday. Um, Chrissy, there's so many different things we can keep talking about. I mean, this has been a really beautiful conversation, but we've already been speaking for over an hour. And I don't want to take up your time. You might have to come back again and jump on and tell us more of your all amazing, amazing stories. But before I even let you go, if I go, because I think this is such a this, like I said before, I was really excited about this conversation because you're just an awesome human being. And amongst all this here, blah 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 blah, you also were a uni crew lead at the university. So what how did you navigate that as well? When I use the word navigate because the team at I think are really fantastic. You do some really amazing or or yourself, Selma, Tane, Sian, Poppy, you do some really cool things, which all student driven. Um, as you were doing that there, what did you learn about yourself as you because again, it's all interaction with a whole range of crazy, awesome young people and also some not awesome people. But what do you learn about yourself in that role there?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. You have so many good questions, Pradesh. I keep firing them. Wow. Um, yeah, I really enjoyed being at Unicrew. It was it's the for anyone who doesn't know, it's the student hub of volunteering community engagement at Targo. And I was, one of the leads along with the wonderful Tane of this podcast last year. But I think through that, it was the people it's always the people, isn't it? It's always the people that really taught me to think outside the square. And I'm a massive fan of Sian and Poppy, the two staff who are at the head of the Social Impact Studio, for always challenging me to think differently and to consider things from a completely different angle that I had never thought of, and just being a little bit radical about how they do things. And that is what really drew me into the Social Impact Studio. I was like, man, I would like to be around people like this more often, who, I kind of have to really think about what I say and think about um, how I can be more open minded about things and look at things from a completely different angle. And I loved all the people that I met at Uni Crew for that reason, and they really helped me to grow in that way.
That's really beautiful. Because again, as I circle right back to the conversation at the start, that's how we crossed paths because one of the projects that you were involved in is one of the projects that I was really passionate about but still about that at that point in time. And as you know, the project has taken off this year, and it's been a real success. So you can see the thinking behind the project, but also the perspectives that yourself, Selma, Tane, Poppy, and Sian came with, and why the project was as successful as I hope it was. So yeah, thank you for that there. Beautiful. Crissy, I'm not going to take your time now. I'm going to wrap up the podcast. But the way we wrap it up with our podcast is called Baskets of Knowledge. And we would love you to share a piece of knowledge to put into our kete and our listeners' kete as we go forward. And again, I'm just going to acknowledge you've shared so much so far, but is there any piece of knowledge that you would go, hey, if I was going to say one thing with somebody out there, what would it be?
Mm, I will have to say jump rather than step. As we have said many times in this podcast, it's probably the most resonating philosophy that I try to remember in my life, and really try to encourage other people to just think that little bit further and take a jump rather than a step. Because I think you always gain something from that.
I think that's really beautiful. This whole episode has shown lots and lots and lots and lots of examples of where if you had just stepped, things would have been a bit different. But the fact that you jumped, the outcomes have been totally. I'm going to say life altering because they have been life altering for you. I'm talking this from an outside, but if I was an outsider writing your movie, I would say there's a life altering moments that have come into play. So, but not just for yourself, but also for the people that you've impacted in that space there. So yeah, I think jump not step is a really beautiful, beautiful piece of knowledge, which I think I should also implement into my life as I go forward. So thank you for sharing that there. Chris, any
No,
last
you're
words
very
before we
welcome.
no.
Yeah, and I think that jumping, not stepping, is scary sometimes, and it is definitely like, like it's a bit overwhelming. I just want to go home, but you do always gain something from it. So I do, definitely want to, leave that with you and your kete. And also on the scholarships front, I definitely just absolutely agree with what you said, but please stick in it if you're trying to get a scholarship, trying to apply for something. maybe it's jobs, maybe it's university, whatever it is, stick at it, because you don't know what's just around the corner or what's currently being processed. And I had kind of like lost hope, and I was like, oh, surely by May, like, it's a little bit too late. I have to pay all these fees and sort it all out and by September, it's not going to happen. But it did come around, but it would have been easy after the Rhodes Scholarship. After I didn't get that, and I'd already gone to Wellington and travelled and done all the interviews and everything, and then just missed out. It would have been easy just to go home and be like, oh, maybe I'll apply again next year, but that's it. So yeah, keep at it, everyone, and persevere. And yeah, I'd just like to say thank you so much for having me on. You are such a lovely person, Prajesh, and I really do find you inspiring as well. And I think that this has been such a nice korero, especially just to reflect on some things. Because this is also like a really kind of overwhelming and lots of changing times part of my life at the moment. Like, I've got 3 days left before I move to London. So it's actually nice as well for me to reflect on things. I've really feel like that's been a blessing just right now to do, and to recenter myself. And I've just had such a lovely chat with you, and it's been fantastic. So thank you very much.
No, thank you. Thank you for those kind words as well. As I said at the start, you're an awesome human being, and thank you so much for taking time. And it's really, really beautiful to hear your story at this point in time, and look forward to seeing what happens next. Crissy, thank you so much. Tane sends his love, and he also says thank you for jumping on. This is really beautiful. For our regular listeners, hopefully you learned something today. For new listeners, hopefully you have found this podcast really interesting. And again, like we always say, if you haven't learned something, go back and listen again, because you were listening on two times speed and not actually listening to what we've got to say. So go back and listen again and pick up those key moments. And don't forget to please like, share, comment on the podcast. Till next time, most important thing, as we always say, is be safe. Find a reason to smile, and don't forget to put something into your basket of knowledge. Till then, bye everybody.
Thank you for listening to Baskets of Knowledge.
Yeah, we hope that you found something useful to put into your basket of knowledge. And as we said before, remember to put something little into your baskets of knowledge every week. And as always, feel free to like, comment, and share this podcast. Thanks, everybody. Bye.